Okay, get started here and call to order the regular scheduled USD 379 board meeting. First thing is with the new calendar year's election of officers. So I'll still start the meeting with opening up nominations for president.
I nominate Jason.
Nomination, Jason.
Second.
1 second, Dave. There's one more step we gotta do. Yes, okay, so I'm moved to close nominations.
Or any other nominated.
Or any other? I move to close nominations.
Second.
A second. All those in favor of closing nomination? Motion carries 5-1. And then, so with that, all those in favor of Jason for president? Carries 5-1. With that, you can have switch seats. I don't know.
Take your names out.
Okay, now. Election of vice president. Nominations.
Nominate Jeff, vice president.
Second.
Is there any more nominations? I make a motion to close nominations.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? 6-0. All those in favor of Jeff for vice president? 6-1.
No, you can say right, you can say right there. I don't need to get that close to it.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you.
Communications, I don't think we have any. Thank everyone for coming to the board meeting tonight, and then, various. Next, the consent agenda, anybody have any questions on that? A grant writing request tracking, how much is that for possibly?
It's just enough to cover in the preschool playground area that's fenced in down there.
Oh, okay.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? That's 6-0. Reports, board reports, positive comments.
I'd like to start out thanking Tracy for his leadership this last as board president. Really appreciate your clear communication, respectful listening, and appreciate your effort and time on that. And then I want to commend all those involved in the January 2nd district event. That was a great time for some socialization and getting all of our district employees together, at least the opportunity to all get together. And the band was great and appreciate the invite.
I'd like to give a shout out to our staff and students for a wonderful singing Christmas tree performance. And it was great to tell. Really done wonderful. Also a thank you to our bus barn staff and drivers for getting everyone home safely from the December accident.
All right, next we'll move on to the technology department report.
Come on up.
Very fast.
Yeah. Well, we are pleased to welcome Mark Sheridan and Chris Wolf here from Techmark to give an annual report. And you'll, if you looked ahead in my report, I kind of talk about the number side. And so do you want the one pager or do you want the 8?
I can do the 8
Okay. I'm gonna switch up here in just a minute.
That we have movement.
What?
You can have it.
Movement, we want to do a long way to go.
No,
Okay.
I don't. I think most of it is put up there, so. I don't know if there's a specific spot where you want me to stand, if you want me to be officially up there, or if you want me to stand. here.
You're fine right there.
Wherever.
Yeah,
Wherever.
you're fine right there.
And this is something, I don't know if everyone's seen, I don't want to read, I'm not a big presentation like read up there, but you can see up there. Basically, you can see, you know, we've come into the school district to help support the school district and especially try and help optimize the technology that's here. So the fall was basically to me kind of building a foundation. And I think that was pretty much our summary of that one. So we can go to the next slide where our big thing that we were running into is that we were told the big thing was the internet would go out. That was one of the first things I had as I was called that the internet was not working. And it turns out there's, you know, trying to figure out the visibility and go through documentation. And the gist of it is Twin Valley manages a lot of it. We didn't really have much visibility and there were some bottlenecks. And that's what's basically kind of pointed out. So we had some filters that were put in place. They were limiting how much could be done. And then on top of that, you had wireless. So if you go to the next page, that was the big issue. And so just a visualization of, we're trying to figure out how is everything connected, and that's what we were able to do. So we ended up replacing devices that Twin Valley was managing, so that it was a district-owned device. So we actually had visibility. We could see what was actually connected to the network. We could verify internet was there, and one of the big things was you were limited to 1 gig, and that was shared. And now I can at least get 2, which is what we're actually paying for. So we got double the amount of bandwidth and in reality, even probably some more. So going to the next page, that's what we are leaning on there. So that was the big things we had. Technically, we now can scale up to 10 because that's what we moved up to. So if we chose, we could pay and get up to 10 gigs, but right now it's 2 is what we're paying for. So that was a big thing is you doubled what you had there. The big thing we found is with the wireless access points, they were also having a lot of interference. So that was kind of another thing that kind of got stuck in there is that there are some overlaps, devices wouldn't connect. And on top of that, we also with Twin Valley, and I'm assuming this was part of when the network was put in, when they were replacing equipment, all the networks were put together. So like everything was talking together and our goal was to start separating things out. And the primary thing was voice, because they have phones that are all on the network as well. So we were trying to make sure that we could prioritize them out. And so that was one of the big things is we resolved that. And so moving on, we also have what I consider some IT that are, you know, not just network ones, but we also, one of the first things when we came in is the concession stand was needing networked so that the access control would work. And that's something that we worked and we were able to purchase a dedicated device, a wireless bridge where it actually can do, like, you know, you could do a couple mile link over wireless and that would connect it to the high school and then it worked. We also had to look at some of the NVR cameras because some of them would go offline and stop communicating and we had to go in and fix up some of the devices so that it could talk. And then we did the same thing with the wireless one. We did that with the bus barn because it was using an old wireless mesh and it was intermittent. And so we replaced it so that way they have a stable link just like the concession stand. And so I just made mention like one of the NVRs was changing settings so that was working like they would expect. So then the next one, and these are somewhere that I would consider kind of maybe IT, maybe not, was the middle school intercom. This is one we were told, hey, they're having constant ghost pages. And essentially Mark was suggesting, and I went and did troubleshooting of let's check the pager button. And so it was basically going in there and we swapped a button with a room that they really don't use and it followed the button. So once we took it to the other room, that room started going off ghost pages. And so we just disconnected that button. So so far haven't reported any more issues with that. We also were, one of the projects before the start of school was to replace the middle school clocks because they were all different times. And so then we found a similar solution.
And we're able to get those all replaced, and of course, trying to go around and replace battery backups, so when power goes out, which I will blame on squirrels in this town, happens more often than I think. You can at least keep it up for a little bit. And so some of the other things we were going into was just malware protection. Like one of the things we came into was just making sure we can make sure the devices are protected. So we made sure licensing was good with that one, trying to optimize how to manage it for doing updates and updating software applications on there. We did end up, I think that was mainly Mark helped get the Chrome boxes set up so that now at the lunchroom, they have a scrolling menu that they can dynamically do a menu on these TVs. So that was one. And then moving on to the next one,
No, because you really didn't talk about the box, and I'm gonna
the box.
brag on you guys a little bit here.
Oh,
that
which,
We, things happen when you have devices out in kids' hands or whatever. But we haven't sent anything off to Apple for repair. They've been able to use our, old
well, I was
inventory,
gonna say there's spares. There was a lot of different
To-
spares and
take parts from one and put on another, things that we normally would have sent out. And I'm gonna get to that in my report on how much. We can't do that forever, but I feel like there's not a piece of equipment back there unused. If it has a good keyboard, we're moving it. If it has a good screen, they're moving it and fixing it. So that's been nice.
And so with all that, I mean, the big thing is that we're at the point now where we feel like the network is now nice and stable. I think the last one that we put on there was with Kite. That was one of the big testing ones we were having issues with, and it's the normal, the vendor said, make this change at the beginning because we're having some bandwidth issues. And now we come back and it was in the late fall, we're saying we're still having problems. And they said, oh, well, that change we told you to make, you shouldn't make. And so we had to undo that, and of course, that fixed the filter. So far, that's puts us in a good stabilization. So now we're wanting to move forward into what can we do to still optimize. And one of the first things is to start working on the wireless access points. That was one of the things we're looking at recommending, because they're at the point where they're no longer going to be supported. So now we can look at replacing those. And on top of that, we're also looking at, I think it's on the next page, if I remember right.
The wireless access points, that would be funded by E-rate.
Right.
So that would be this next iteration of E-rate that we'd be putting out to bid this spring. And that would cover all your access points.
And that's the basic, and I think that falls in line with what happened on the last E-rate cycle. I think they replaced all the access points first and then started working their way through.
That's only around 30,000.
Pardon me?
That's what we've got before from E-rate.
We have to pay 30% of the cost. Do you have an estimate for, we haven't really done that part yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, 70% is the E-rate and we pay 30.
And we're also up for our internet bandwidth this summer. So that'd also be going out for bid.
And so one of the things is, like I said, we were looking at replacing all that one. Then since we've already separated out, so the voice part of the network is separated, we could also now start really isolating and say, okay, let's prioritize the student network, and then we can make a guest network so you can prioritize. So if someone gets on the wireless, right now it's all shared when they get on there, and that's the goal, is to start prioritizing, saying, okay, if it's a student device, it has priority over someone who comes in as a guest speaker or something like that. So we can start separating out the traffic. The other one is like in the ag building, it's one of the things that needs to be rewired because there's like switches going to other switches, and it just needs to be re-centralized there. So that's one of the things we're looking at. And of course, then, Jacqueline's brought in got some really good grants on a lot of equipment coming in. So that's also trying to continue getting all those grant devices out.
You might touch on that we fixed some devices that were here already, started deploying them with some dumb switches out there. But now we're getting more alerts so that we're aware if the bus barn goes down, we're aware if the concession stand goes down, so we can be proactively address it.
And that's one of the things we're trying to make sure we go through and use all the equipment that's here and not just going out and buying new. If there's something here that can be used, we will put it out in production now. But obviously, if it can't be used, then that's something we'll put in for recycling. And then one of the things we're trying to, and this is again, not something that may happen this spring, but one of the future aspects is to do a centralized login, since we're pretty much a Google shop, is trying to make it so there's just one login. And so like right now, the students will have like a login to their computer and then a login to Google, and the goal is, can you centralize it? Can you just have one? So that way they could deal with it that way. And it also would affect, it also goes along with the staff, so that way that you just have one account that you have to worry about instead of trying to figure out all of these others. And then with it, since primarily we're on Macs, the goal is to try and get to where with the Windows machines that are out there, and like some of the, like the CAD departments, when they have all these CAD desktops and stuff like that. The goals, can we manage them similarly like how the Macs are, so that they're centralized? And because like right now, they're kind of just standalone devices, and that's one of the goals that we're trying to make it so they are managed and we have visibility on them as well. And then, one of the future things is trying to go through and look at what is all the software that we have out there. And is it still applicable? Is there some that maybe we don't need that we could, get rid of? And maybe there's licenses we really don't use and save money that way as well. And then of course, yeah, that's one of the other things is to look at the old equipment, because there is a lot that's in the garage out there that needs to go through and be recycled, because there's some of the older MacBooks that need to be moved off because
We
they're no
can't
longer
use it
supported. You
anymore.
can't use them. Because the Apple in general runs, I think I was guessing probably about 8 years. Is how long you can run a computer, and then they just stop supporting them. So basically, I think kind of the summary is that when we come in, the main thing was just the stability of the internet. And that was really reconciling that foundation. So now we can move forward to where we can start focusing on optimization of, can we prioritize traffic? Let's do some management. And that's and looking at the E-rate, that's what we're looking at is, can we replace some of the equipment, make it even better, explore, like we said, internet options, and see what makes the most sense for the school and what's the best value. Because that's really what we're trying to go is, what's the best value for it? It's not always about the cheapest, it's about what's the best money, what's the best bang for your buck.
How much of a load do you think it'll add if the bond passes and we put all the voice over cameras and fire alarm stuff tied in? Like,
Well,
will that add much?
It all depends on what happens on the network itself. So for currently, the way all those camera systems are set up is they're a totally separate network. Now with that coming in, you could put them on the network and that's fine, but you'd separate them off. So to me, it'd be no different than what you have, except that you're not buying separate switches for just the cameras. You can combine it together. So in a way that would make it more efficient, instead of paying for another switch to power those cameras. Now you can just put them on there and we isolate them out. And then it does give you the, a decision of how do you want to have access to those cameras? Right now it's always been isolated, which is fine. There's no reason why you have to, but then it does give an option that you could open it up more to where, if there's a principal and they needed to see something, or Mr. Nelson wants to look at something, he could. Right now, you physically have to go there, but you could secure it now in a way on that one. In terms of load, like between it, most of the time at the schools, it's a pretty good bandwidth that's there. So I think internally it would be fine. The question would be, if you're wanting to stream all this stuff outside of the building, then sure, that would be something you'd have to factor in. If there's a reason, if that's something that wants to be done, then it's something you'd factor in.
You might touch base on the infrastructure that's starting to be put in terms of ubiquity, in terms of cameras, door security.
Sure, and I was gonna say, one of the things when we were replacing the devices at the schools is Twin Valley just had their router that was there. And that was just kind of a gratis that they put there, but again, we had no visibility. So when we replaced it with a device that has multi-purpose. In a way, it could also be used for cameras. It also has built-in where you can add some storage to it, and you can add cameras to it, and it can record there and replace the older one that fell. So that's one of the things though. So instead of buying another box, you can reuse what's already there. There's no additional cost. You just have to buy hard drives for that. And on top of that, they also have with that same system, they can do access control. So that's one of the things that it's potentially could look at it and see if maybe that would be cheaper than the current one as you expand it, because we could add more centralized access controls there. So that one of the vendors we went with was Ubiquity, because that's their goal they're very much trying to be user friendly is what their goal is. It's something that's secure, but easy enough that it's not just takes a dedicated IT person, that you can have someone go in there and actually look at it and get some good visibility. Because that's the one thing I do like on, instead of trying to be techie and look at all this stuff, it puts nice reports and you can see what devices are on there, what's actually being used, and that's something when you have information you can share. But it is a versatile system because they're trying to be in a lot of stuff in terms of access control cameras and all that.
So looking at slide 11 on there, and talk about Google Workspace optimization and two-step verification. Is that just for teachers? Because how would students do that without having access to their
Well,
phones?
the two-step comes back down to you choosing location is like your second factor. So it'd be something like with students, if they're outside, it's just denied. Since they can't do the second factor when they're on site, that provides their second factor.
Okay, so as long as
Because
they're
it's
not in the school
location.
building.
Right, but teachers, we want to add the extra one that if we can, even if you're on site, we want to make sure that someone's not just spoofing it. So I think it still requires, if I remember right,
Staff. Yes.
for staff, that it requires that they,
It's forced on for staff and.
And not for students.
right.
Right.
But it's still, like I said, for the laptops, that's the goal, is like, for example, at the high school, if you were to log in right now, they might have a shared account that they're using on certain devices, and the goal would be, well, let's just make it you just sign in with the same username and password that you have, rather than something that's unique on that device. So it just makes it simple for the students, so they don't have to remember, oh, here's this login for this, and I use something else for something else.
And you said we had 1 gig, is what we got.
Well, 1 gig, we have 2 gigs here, but the way that all the schools work is they have a 1 gig connection to here.
Okay.
So you have 5 schools, 5 buildings, and 2 gigs that they can share, if that makes sense for the internet.
And you think we need to increase that?
Well, that's one of the things we're putting out for bid, is to see how much it's the cost, because we can also change it. The way it is right now is all the schools come here. You could also make it where the schools could each have their own gig internet connection, so each one would have a gig, but it depends on the cost.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things we're just exploring first, to see what the cost is and what makes the best value for the school district.
And the equipment put into this fall puts it in a position we can go either route with no additional expense.
So what Jason was talking about with the proposed bond, the upgrades, for instance, on the security enhancements, then if we secure them through static IP service, then that right there, that wouldn't be an issue in itself.
Well, it depends, the static IP, it just comes down, that comes down to registration if you have services coming in. So most of it's gonna come down to how much bandwidth do you really want? And and it comes down to how you want things to connect together. So like right now, Twin Valley provides it that they're connecting all the schools to here. You could change that and say, okay, maybe it's cheaper that each school has its own internet. And maybe like the high school, maybe you want more at the high school. So you could say, you know what, the high school needs 2, but maybe like, Garfield has smaller students, so maybe you don't want to pay as much for Garfield. And so you could change it if need be. Or maybe it's, Wakefield finds that they're having this, they're doing something and they're requiring more internet. You could change just that one instead of just paying for it here.
Maybe I took your question a different way, so maybe I'll answer it. So all the network equipment has power over Ethernet right now, so we can power devices. So if you have devices for like clocks or intercom systems that go with the bond, they can be powered off the network. They won't put much of a load on the network generally from a traffic standpoint. They'll just maybe put a little bit of load on the network switches to power the devices. Usually fire alarms are tied to a cellular connection these days instead of a phone line or a network connection. So right now we're thinking the network's getting in a nice place that anything you go with, we can shift and be agile to take it on without much of an impact.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it, thank you.
Any other questions for him? When I get to my report, I'll show you the 5-year plan and which areas we're kind of looking at. So we'll get to that.
Thanks for your work.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Just a quick update on open positions, with our, specifically with our administration, openings. We opened those prior to Christmas break. We're currently receiving applications and screening them as they come in. We will follow a similar process as we have in the past, and so, we'll be looking to put together some committees. We'll put together a quality trait survey to each staff that deal with those so we can gather some input on what each department's looking for in their next leader and try to help use that to screen applicants and guide our interview process. We'll be looking for volunteers from each department or building to participate on those. We would ask that we have one board member per committee. If somebody would like to volunteer, just shoot me an email and let me know if that's something you'd like to do. Looking at possibly, depending on our applicant pool, maybe towards the end of the month, starting that process if we have a good pool for each position, and depending on what those pools look like, tossing around a lot of ideas. Do we do some together to where then we can blend them? If we have too many applicants, maybe a separate amount. I don't know. We'll just see what the pool looks like as they come in. But if that interests you, please let me know and we will open that up to each building and department here in the next couple of weeks to volunteer if that's something they'd like to do. Last week on Tuesday, we did our bond hearing interview with KSDE. And they have a committee and you have to explain your bond, the process you've gone through, the cost, all the stuff that you guys have been doing. And then that committee makes a recommendation to the state board. And that will be, is that this week, Jacqueline? Maybe
It's January
Wednesday.
17th.
Yeah, starts.
And so that went well. We got some really great feedback. I don't anticipate any issues or challenges there, so.
Yeah, our architect was the most popular one on that, those guys. She's worked with him quite a bit and had a lot of good things to say about her.
Take any questions if you have any.
So we have all those teaching positions are posted.
Yeah, they're posted on August, where all do you post in August?
USD379.org/jobs and the Kansas Educational Job Board. And then we've also got them going out in the dispatch and the regional coming this week, starting this week for the next 5 weeks.
Any questions? The next teller report, you'll see it. Sure needs somewhere else tonight, but Rick only has one. Need one pair, so that's pretty good. Jacqueline.
So, in my report, I just wanted to talk a few more things as far as technology goes and kind of get more into the numbers. As you can tell with Mark and Chris, they have really. You have to come into a system and work with it for a while to see where the needs are. And they're still navigating that. They shared some of their first priorities, which they've been working on. But as far as staffing goes, we don't feel like we're in the place to hire more full-time, because I don't know that it's needed if certain things get set up right. There's times we need more hands, but just for a few hours here and there. And so you will see in our, down on the personnel, we have a person who was at 37.5 hours. And we'd like her to work the extra 2.5 hours a week to get up to 40, not to exceed that, and then continue on to the summer. So that would make her 12. I will say the summer months is a lot of hands on deck, because every device gets touched. So it does take time depending on where we are with the bond. Those guys, that's where they need to be focusing on. And so, as far as staffing goes, we've pulled down the posting just because we don't know that there is a need for a full-time person. we're not ready to say that. I could come back in 4 months and say thinking differently, but I'll keep you guys posted on that because I don't know that we're there. As far as cost savings, I just did a rough estimate as far as labor goes, so staffing, the repairs, and then we had some outsourced service contracts. Just July to October, we saved around $46,000. So, I had told you from the start, I thought we'd be at 50 to 75,000, and I really truly believe we'll be towards the upper end of that. One of the things they are doing, they kind of mentioned it, but we're looking at what subscriptions and different things that we pay for. And one, making sure the number is accurate as far as how many licenses we're receiving or needing, and then two, if there's anything that we're doubling up in service, is there just one preferred over the other? So we are looking at that as well. As far as the 5-year tech plan goes, so I put a picture of it in there and it's kind of blurry. Not bad. So you see there's items in blue and yellow. The yellow are some of the things they've been talking about. So you heard them talk about battery backups, and they haven't spent $2,000, but they have purchased some of those. They've been working with some of the switches and things, but those ones up in the blue, because of the grants we've received, we are predicting, I don't want to give you a number, get your hopes up, but we are predicting a lot of savings up there as well in the blue. So our hope is that when we come back in February, we can tell you what needs to be purchased, what's going to go to an RFP, so we can bring that back in March for approval. If it's coming out of this fiscal year, we'd like to make the purchases in March so they arrive by May so we can close out smoothly. We had put down at the bottom 30,000 for indirect. I wanted to make that blue because I don't know that much of that is even going to be needed. But again, I needed to just leave that for now. But we are on target to spend less this year than 250. And I think it will be significantly less than that for those different sections represented.
On the CAD labs, I assume those have to be, they can't be Apple.
No,
I assume that.
they're PC. So the grant that we got through K-State, those are going in there. And so to work off a laptop though is not ideal for the CAD labs. And so we are going to, so that 25,000, it'll be less than that, but we are gonna have to buy some monitors for them. We ended up getting 64 of those. And so 25 will go in the CAD lab in Clay Center, maybe 20, and then 5 down in Wakefield. And then the others, we're looking to have them on a cart for construction and ag to use, because that's what most of that equipment has to operate off of. So it'll be options for those students, and then some, I call them loose laptops for the shop down in Wakefield to use as well for their equipment.
Are we using iPads and Chromebooks and both right now?
We have iPads in K1. We took all devices out of the preschool. We have iPads in K1 and a Chromebook in 2nd grade right now. So we'll have updates on what those devices mean in the blue.
Chromebooks are cheaper, right?
Mhm.
But again, I think it's somewhere where if the iPad is best. I mean, I've worked with both and I know which one I prefer. And we need to do what's best for the educational part of it, in my opinion.
So I'll bring that back in February to you guys. So I think some of the I don't know if I'd say dual subscription, but some of the changes we might make, and I'll give an example. There's a filtering service that we're paying for, that if we actually don't use the free Google, if we do the upgraded version, it has that component in it. So we don't want to double pay. And so we're doing that cost analysis of what they all cost and does it meet our needs? So.
I feel like we're in a better spot. So I appreciate that. And the guys in the building.
Thank you, Jack.
We're on the business items. First one is annual meeting dates.
I'll move to approve the meeting dates as presented.
Second,
All those in favor? Next business item is calendar report.
Okay, any questions from anybody?
I move to approve the calendar as presented.
second,
All those in favor? That's a 6-0. Whole bunch of policies.
Just as a reminder, we did make those changes in the non-resident ones, some wording and stuff between last meeting and now that we talked about. We also, there was an adult ed policy in there, but we don't have adult ed, so we struck that policy. I don't think we need a policy for a program that we don't have. Did catch Jacqueline on that. And then Dave asked for a draft of another, policy DJEG. Put that together, sent it to Dusty for him to review. He said it was good, and so you guys, I was asked to put that as its own item, so it's its own item, so.
Anybody have any questions on any of them? Discussion.
Yes, on policy, the II Bravo Echo B, page number 2.
The AI.
AI one.
On this statement right here, I think it was on page 2. While utilizing, thank you, approved AI tools, staff and students still comply with the following. On number 4, it says there are use approved AI tools. And so I'm thinking, well, okay, are we talking like a tool?
Oh, that's my bad. It's probably supposed to be tools.
Okay, that's what I'm just curious about to see, while we're updating the policy, if there's nothing of just a grammar. Okay.
that's coming eventually, Dave. There'll be tolls.
That's first I've heard about it, but hey, it's AI, so, it can happen. And then prohibited uses. On number 4, I had here, said basically, no staff member or student shall use AI in violation of board policy or applicable law, including but not limited to the following. Of course, we've got a list here. Number 4, submit AI generated work as a student's own, or fail to cite or disclose the use of AI or AI generated work. To me, that's kind of contradictory in a way. And and I go back to just the prohibited use. This statement right here in itself, no staff members, students don't use AI in violation of board policy or applicable law. So if that's the case, couldn't it just be shortened to submit AI generated work as a student's own as a prohibited use?
So like for example, I'm finishing up my doctorate work and working on dissertation and stuff. And so at the collegiate level, and we have some members in our audience that could probably speak to this too, but it's becoming common practice with writing that if you do utilize AI to produce anything, then you have to cite your work and cite that you used artificial intelligence to help. And so it's saying you can't use AI unless you cite it. And of course, it's approved by the instructor. Is that fair?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so
Be like a
would that
footnote
apply to
on
the K through
on
12
research, be like a footnote or a research paper.
Right, was an application, one of my kids had to write something and then they had to have it approved by AI or improved by AI, and then they did a comparison and they submitted that. So that was a way of them figuring out how to use the tools that are gonna be available to them as adults when they graduate in an effective way, but also at the same time, learning the differences, being able to prove AI, to check for errors. Wow, so the effective use of the tools. While still having to learn to do it the way we did, where you already check your own grammar and your own spelling, et cetera. So there's the application.
And right now in the handbook, it basically states unless the teacher has directly instructed you on how to use or what to use, or that they're okay with it, then it is considered against academic integrity. And so it has put it back on our teachers to really teach the kids. And, you know, I use we're all sitting around the table with a brain that's over the age of 25 and developed. And so if we use those tools, we can make those decisions and look at it differently than someone younger who, you know, we don't want to take away that ability to generate and create, but rather what tools are there, when's the right time to use them and how. I know Mrs. Murphy is here, but she has some, what would you call your quill bot? Just a checker that, I mean, could have been used years ago for just copyright and copying someone too. Very similar.
My classes through Cloud County, we use turnitin.com. That's pretty much a given, and it checks for both like copied and pasted material. And then it also checks for AI. And I use the Quillbot as a backup because AI checkers, I mean, you have to use multiple tools with them.
Do you have much trouble with that?
Some. Yes. Mhm. And you know, we talk a lot about, like, it's a starting point for discussions, right? I mean, and what we're doing in the English department now is checking sooner in the process. You know, I'm looking at thesis statements, and then we're looking at rough drafts, we're looking at outlines along the way, so we can hopefully catch that sooner, and it's not just with that final paper, and they're worth grades all the way. So I mean, in some ways, I think that's been a good change for us, because the whole department is doing that as well.
I would anticipate we'll have something with AI policy, every policy update for the next several years, because we will continue to learn all kinds of things in the next few years. And I know USA, KSB, KSD, they're all offering PD sessions every quarter, multiple of them, and it will evolve and change a lot in the next few years. So I promise you what we have now isn't what we'll have in probably even 6 months to a year.
I appreciate that KSB gives us these draft policies, and they've already had their lawyers and experts, people who know about it more than us, being able to draft these for us.
Well, it'll be a moving target for a while.
Those notes on steroids. There it is. It always a hell of a lot faster than to read them yourself.
Move to approve the policy updates as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Next one is policy DJEG, purchasing order contracts. Any other questions on that?
Why do we need this again? What's the purpose?
So my opinion is, you know, as a board, we do three things. We control the money. We evaluate Brett, overlook the superintendent, and then we pass policies and procedures for the school district. That's what we do. This here deals with money. Is that, so because of that, I do think it's appropriate that when certain things are gonna be waived or whatever, that it come before the board. As we approve the contracts and what it says in it, then if there is a penalty or something like that, and we decide not to enforce it, whatever, then that should be a board decision since it deals with money. And so that's the reason behind the policy. That's it.
So would these discussions be public meeting, side meetings or exec?
Public meetings. Unless it's some type of privileged, or was it's not privileged, it's priority. What's that word? That's the.
Proprietary.
Proprietary, unless it involves some proprietary information, but otherwise it would be public.
Does it address change orders too? I guess that would be part of the
That's part
discussion.
of the contract. Like an example is if it's not finished by a certain date and there's a penalty and they get it done 30 days later. I mean, yeah, if legitimate cause come for the board and we could vote to waive it, not collect it or collect it, but that should be a board decision since that involves money. If we're going to give that up. That's really in a nutshell what it says. In most situations.
Policy. EG.
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Passes 5-1. Next is approved CMAR.
Yeah, I put a copy of the revised fee schedule in there that you guys had asked me to work on. I think it turned out pretty favorably.
I moved to approve Neville, it says the construction manager at risk for the projects approved as part of the 2026 bond.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Passes 5-1. And next meeting, we'll have leader meet update. This will take a 5-minute break, then we'll go to executive session. Yeah.
Appreciate it, Mike.
Thank you, guys.
Look forward to working with you.
I know, what's the deal?
I don't know. I had one last week and I was going, what happened? He goes, there was no chairs out, so I left and I went. Oh,
Oh, no, because Marvin.
No, he did work in. He came last week.
That's what he said, it's in the executive session. Well, I had one. But I had to see it.
Count the days.
Okay.
I still. That sounds like your stuff.
Oh, the duo.
Always says on the meeting, talk to me.
Good person.
Yeah, he was.
Hey, good one.
Yep, always. Okay.
You're welcome. Yeah, take some home. I was gonna bring to go containers, but I was out, so.
I was gonna say, would you rather? First name too?
Besides just the students.
We had a week last week. See, do you? So food buy talks to, now this is how they explain it. So where I did our ordering and food buy in chart, it talks to the discovery. Well, with the holidays, they said our order, it got sent out. Stuff. Even though you are, we didn't even try, so. So I had, they couldn't just sit on their shit. I was there Wednesday, Thursday was the holiday.
And then the next year.
About an hour later, oh my gosh, sorry. I'm doing my best, trying to get you to. Thanks, Tracy. Seventh grade basketball for 30th grade, but my son's first basket of the year. Actually, I think possibly the first basket of the game.
You know.
Hopefully somebody. And if you heard us talking earlier, he's fully accepted. Lessons, so we're at that. It makes it fun. He just likes to play.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. How it works.
Well, then,
You learn
well,
how
you
to
So- so
do
people
some of
do
it,
it.
once you get the structure built, then you gotta call the
Because
expert.
how tough you work.
You're not DIY now.
But they.
Top
Is that difficult? I feel like,
Because if you didn't work hard, you didn't hard.
are you like, use YouTube now?
You know. So I went and watched my 11-year-old granddaughter plays on fiddle and that's. They want everything by double.
Are you live? I think you're in reference.
It's always gonna start
They shoot regular free throws, shoot a couple girls on that team she plays on,
So I'm the-
shoot threes and make them. Yeah, they're so one, 11,
Oh,
6.
So which one are you, which daughter?
It's Zach's.
Which you usually, what they're.
Saturday, they had a girl playing on Mound Ridge, they had a son playing in Hutch, and then you had oldest girls playing in Chapman. That's
You
you.
grandparents when it comes to that.
My wife went to Mound Ridge and took the one that was at Mound Ridge to a couple games. Yeah, I told her I'd be there in Chapman. Play Center was in that tournament. Rock Creek was in the tournament. Team from Hawaii. And a team from Junction.
I guess you were at the bigger mountain.
I seen Dawn Richter, her husband, and I think their daughter has a boy playing, she plays on a team in White City, maybe. Tana.
We didn't.
She married, I think, Aspen down there. They had, yeah, they had a son, they had a grandson playing.
I can see Scott.
Yeah, they were both there, and Mike and Mel.
We were almost at our house. We would have been, we could have went a couple more days. We would have mac and cheese and maybe something else. I had it all figured out just in case. But it was a.
China, they moved back, they were close, they were coaching that team, they were close.
So I was involved. I was doing all this. Yes. That's the kitty theater spot over days.
Yes.
Yes. Between school.
It is crazy.
You know, and that kid, yeah, I was gunning in seventh grade.
Yeah.
Negotiation.
He was,
High school.
yeah,
Yeah, probably even more short.
yeah, he was the short one, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was in seventh grade, he just stood on his basket and made baskets, and, you know, by the time he would have gone into high school, he was a point guard, you know? Which is part of the folks now, saying, you know. Fifth grade basketball, he was a big old folks player.
That Lake Elbow,
Right.
that's pretty
I mean, he
insane.
didn't play his size, but he was small by the time he was.
Well, school districts is, I would rather.
That's why we encourage, even if you're not great now, you will.
Yeah, it's a lot harder. It's more.
Because I was kind of just wanted to get to see them.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's probably-
Yeah.
Fox Creek is about.
Thank you.
Right, that, yeah.
Thank you. That's not the first time.
That's not.
I think, probably,
Good thing you like it.
That's,
I'll pick it up.
We gotta wait for it.
Yeah.
No,
They're not in his office, if you would mind.
not to resume. Yeah, here he comes.
Okay, sorry. I haven't interrupted.
Yeah.
All right, I move we go into executive session to discuss the superintendent evaluation and superintendent contract and other personnel matters pursuant to the non-elected personnel appointment under KOMA and the open meeting resume at 7:30. The executive session should include board superintendent council.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Oh, come on.
Oh, yeah, regular personnel, because I think we have
Yeah,
regular
and
personnel.
include Jack.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Second.
All those in favor?
Good job. Tonight, appreciate it. Yes. Yeah, and I bet you there's other ones, I'm gonna go to the buildings and see there's other ones, I'll send you this.
I'll look it up now, they show up with the same method, I mean, you don't have to. I'll just proactively go through and just mark them all and put them in.
Perfect. Thank you.
Have to read all that.
I think you just say that you extend.
We're
Yes, I
I moved to extend executive session by 15 minutes.
Second.
I think you just say finishing it at 7:45.
Yeah, finish like 7:45. All those in favor?
Yes. Make it up, I can get it there.
Who's gonna fire blame? Now. The mom.
The next personnel,
We don't need negotiation. Separate.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I could
Do you need
do this,
that,
we just do it next month.
Okay,
We still got several months,
yeah. Let's do
What are
it.
we trading letters on what, March 1st,
31st.
31st?
So we actually have 2 weeks.
We actually,
Oh,
yeah, and after.
Yeah.
Who's
We're
in
okay.
the negotiating team again? Or did we vote on
yeah,
that?
who is on the negotiation?
I've already done my training, so I'll stay on it if that's okay. I'll
Okay,
negotiate.
do it
Wanna do it?
You didn't have to do that training.
Do you have to vote on that?
No, you appoint them.
Okay, you're appointed.
You say you
Thanks for
and you.
volunteering.
No buffs, no guff.
Good.
In August, will you remind me to do the training?
Yeah.
Okay. Next personnel, any questions on that? The approved personnel report is presented,
Second,
all those in favor?
move to adjourn.